Now you can get the same uncompromising truth you've come to expect from the Final Call newspaper on all your connected devices. Subscribe to the Final Call Digital Edition today. Go to subscribe.finalcalldigital.com.
Assalamu alaikum. Once again, we're up for another edition of Behind the Final Call cover story. Very, very, very important and powerful issue. As always, on the cover this week is USA government officials. UFOs are unreal. We're actually, as we're working out this show and figuring out what the best way is to cover information and what you all like best, we're going to do a little something different today, since the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's article, as well as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's article, both cover and deal with that. We're going to cover a few other things before we jump into that. But assalamu alaikum, Brother Naba. Once again, let's jump into the show. So,
Wa alaikum salam, sir. How are you?
Good. Balaz,
and the cover reads, of course, U.S. government officials. UFOs are real. Yeah, so this was a congressional hearing where really this is the I'm sorry. So anyway, that's the cover. And we'll go to the other stuff. We'll come back to that later. But basically, we are starting from a recent congressional hearing that we think was pretty significant. And we can go to the other items first.
Thank you. So, of course, this is a new generation rising in the word. I'll pass it right to you.
Well, this was, of course, a very historic day, a very historic broadcast, where we had recently on a 2-hour show the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the members of the Executive Council of the Nation of Islam. I think very important because this was the first time that this group that has been given the great task and a responsibility of guiding the nation and dealing with the affairs of the Nation of Islam has been introduced to publicly. I mean, of course, if you are in the Nation of Islam or you're familiar with the Nation of Islam, you probably know and have heard of many of them. But this was the first time that they were introduced as a body. And it was the first time that our people had the opportunity to hear from them, all of them individually, except for Student Supreme Captain Mustafa Farrakhan, who oversees the training and the development of the men. He was not able to take part in the broadcast over the airways of WVON AM 1690 in Chicago, Black Talk radio station. So his bio was read, but it was, I think, a very important day, an important event. When you read, and you really should get into the article and read it, you can get it at finalcall.com. The minister talked about the principles of governance. He talked about Jesus as the model public servant, if you will, or the example of the model leader. He talked about the desire of the Nation of Islam and the leadership to be different and the determination to be different from what we have experienced under our former slave masters. So Eddie Reed, longtime activist and friend of the Nation of Islam, was the host of the program. And, we really hope that you will read this article. And you can also go online and you can actually hear this broadcast for yourself. The minister, in addition to introducing and talking about the Nation of Islam and the Executive Council, or Shura Executive Council, Shura being taken from an Arabic word and a chapter in the Holy Quran, which means to consult. So this was the first time this collective body was introduced. and its function was talked about publicly. But in addition to that, the minister also took some questions from callers, and he dealt with some subjects there, as well as always, in general, and every time he speaks, we really get a chance to hear a level of really supreme wisdom that I think we should all appreciate, and we should all um, give ourselves the opportunity to to avail ourselves of. We should always avail ourselves, rather, of the opportunity to hear directly from this man while we are able to do so. Not to mention the millions of words that he has spoken that we now have the opportunity to study and to benefit from. So we really hope you'll go to finalcall.com, and you can go, I guess, to noi.org, and not only read about the radio broadcast, but you can also hear it for yourself. So do yourself a favor.
Praise you to Allah. Thank you for that, brother Nava. And just in addition, of course, you see the link at the bottom, media.noi.org, and you can listen to these words in its entirety. And it was very important note that the minister was requested. The interview was originally requested of the interview was really originally a request for the minister, and the minister desired for the executive council to be on there. So it's sometimes I know, and I've been guilty of this, is that sometimes you want to fast forward and listen to what the Honorable Minister Farrakhan has to say, but his desire was for them to be there. So I would encourage you to listen closely to what they share, and try to get into why he would be sharing this at this point in time. So all praise is due to Allah. Thank you,
Yeah,
thank you, thank you.
and it was great to hear the members of the executive council speak for themselves, and of course the minister obviously has great confidence in this group, and so it, like you said, it's a great to be able to hear them speak for themselves. So those of us who are not familiar can get a little taste of each of the people in leadership, and an understanding of what their role is. And that should lead us to how we can help and assist them in this great work of the Honorable Ajman.
Yes, sir. Praise you to Allah. All praises to Allah. So jumping really quickly to the next article that we want to touch on, and that is found on page number 4. Pain and confusion. Buffalo faces aftermath of mayhem. Of course, this is an article, or this is a subject that has taken over the news, and we are definitely familiar with that. Can you give us a little more insight on what our coverage is this week in the Final Call News?
This is, of course, a follow up to our cover story last week about the outright slaughter and murder of 10 people at the hands of a white gunman, allegedly an 18-year-old, who simply and methodically and acting as a true terrorist went to Buffalo, New York, researched going there, and basically slaughtered our people intentionally. So this story was kind of a follow up because, unfortunately, Brother Troy, this story has dropped out of the mainstream media. They kind of followed it for a few days, and now it's gone. We don't intend to do that. So we went back to Buffalo in terms of our coverage, and we took the opportunity to allow our people to share how they are still feeling, how they are still suffering, the unanswered questions that they still have, and what they need to do to heal. So this is written by one of our contributing writers, Brother William Muhammad. So we hope that you will read it, as well as, reach out to us. One, like and follow this broadcast or webcast. First of all, do that. But then you can go to finalcall.com and you can read, and you can submit to us through our website what you think. You can submit to us through this now weekly program that we're doing by Allah's grace, and you can tell us what you think, questions that you have, how these articles touched you, how they didn't touch you. But we would love to hear from you.
All praise are due to Allah. Now, I have to mention, and we're not going to necessarily go into it too much, and that is, of course, we always have to lift and make sure that you're checking out the very special section of the Final Call newspaper. Not that everything in this paper is not special, because it definitely is, but this is just a highlight of what's highlighted in terms of COVID-19 and the U.S. Policy of depopulation. Make sure that you check out this section. We have Dr. Ridgely in a very important article dealing with the global battle to stop wicked scientists from making the whole world deviate from the law of God. Very, very impactful. So make sure you check that out. You're not going to get this type of coverage and this type of information from anywhere else except the Final Call newspaper. So make sure you check out that special section. And in this day and time, I have to just take a quick note, quick pause, and make sure that we, as these rates are being reported to go up, make sure that we're doing all that we can to strengthen our immune system. If you do not have the book, How to Eat to Live by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I would definitely encourage you to make sure that you get that book and do what you can to strengthen your immune system. So all praise is due to Allah for that guidance, divine guidance. That we have it, make sure that you take advantage of it. Okay, so moving really quickly, we want to jump to, of course, the beautiful thing is that in the paper is that we're not just covering what's going on in Chicago, even though we're headquarters there, but we're covering everything that's going on around the country, but also around the world. Very important article in this paper this week. And sometimes this type of information doesn't necessarily get to us on what's going on internationally. But there's an article on page 12. Will U.S. troops be headed back to Somalia pose more problems? Can you give us a little insight on that, brother?
Yeah, well, recently we've had the announcement and we have the deployment. We have had the deployment of U.S. troops back into the country of Somalia. Ostensibly, they're supposed to be going to fight terror and to support a recent kind of electoral process that the Somalis have been involved in. But again, we know, one, the history of the U.S. and Somalia has never been good. The U.S. has never had a history of trying to help the Somali people enjoy freedom, justice, and equality or self-determination. So with this intervention again, under the Biden administration, I might add, you could ask the question, well, what's the difference between Russian troops in Ukraine to satisfy the security goals of Russia versus U.S. troops now on the ground in Somalia? We should not ever be fooled, brothers and sisters. We should always look at the reality. And the reality is that this militarization of Africa and this U.S. always having a commitment to bring in troops. And when you read the article, you'll read one of our analysts who talks about the fact that what's happening in Somalia will never be resolved militarily. There are some questions about instability. There are some groups that are causing problem in the name of Islam and in the name of religion. But as one of our other analysts said in the article, those are problems that our brothers and sisters on the continent will have to resolve for themselves. And I might add, even though Al-Shabaab in Somalia, which is in the Horn of Africa, which is also an important and strategic region for the United States as well. But, so you have these groups and you've got them in Somalia, but you've got them in other parts of Africa, including West Africa, even going into Kenya. But when you look back to how these groups expanded, when you look back at how these groups were able to move and how they moved, you look back at the destruction of Libya. And the destruction of Libya by America and the European countries essentially opened the door to all of these things that we're seeing in West Africa, Central Africa, and other places. So these U.S. excursions, these military excursions in Africa have never turned out well.
Brother Naba, are you still there? Okay. Well, inshallah, he'll be back on. I know he was.
Things come back and affect us one way or another.
Yeah, we got your back.
Either they affect us in when it comes to where money is spent and where it isn't spent, as well as whether or not the world is actually made safer. None of this makes the world safer, and all of it just shows the hypocrisy in this addiction to war and conquest that America has, that is literally leading to her destruction.
Yes, sir. Of course, there's a few articles that are in here that deal really with international news. And like always, you just need to make sure that you get your own edition of the latest edition of the Final Call newspaper. Support yourself by supporting the brothers that you see out in the street, in the community, carrying the most important and most powerful Black newspaper that you can get your hands on. And of course, that is the Final Call newspaper. You can go to finalcall.com or you can go to finalcalldigital.com and get your digital edition of the newspaper. And if you're a busy person, sometimes we got a lot going on. You can actually have, if you have a subscription to the digital edition, you can actually have the paper read to you. So while you're in motion, while you're commuting, you can actually have the paper read to you. So you can see right there scrolling at the bottom of the screen, subscribe to the digital edition of the Final Call newspaper, and you can do that by going to finalcalldigital.com. So
yeah, and we got another story I want to just point to, Brother Troy, because this is a subject that we are going to kind of keep coming back to.
on what page?
On page 13, important story about, again, food insecurity in the world. A lot of it coming out of Ukraine, but also other conditions. Important piece coming out of the United Nations. And we'll give you a little bit of a preview. Look for something else on this subject, inshallah, coming next week. So when the minister quotes scripture and quotes the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, that talks about a day of famine and hunger and want, we need to really, and Allah is really showing us how this thing could and will unfold. So these stories that we're running, they bear witness to the truth in one way or another. So we want you to really take the time to look at them, and to look at them not through the lens of this world, but look at them through the lens of the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And then I think that will help give us the proper perspective to understand what's going on, to understand the time, and understand what must be done.
Praise to Allah. All praises are due to Allah. And of course, you can see we have the international brief dealing with what's going on in San Juan, Puerto Rico, in Cairo, Egypt, dealing with the Ukraine. All of those you can check out in the international news briefs in the Final Call newspaper. When we jump,
and last, we got an important story out of Nigeria, the kind of religious-based killing of a young woman, which we really hope that you will take the time to read that too, because in a sense, we as Black people in America do not have these kinds of religious wars among us. In particular, physically, we get some rhetoric flying back and forth. But the minister has worked and the Muslims have worked to make sure. And we have tried to serve our community regardless of what we call ourselves. So we're not limited to, you can't get, the only way you can get help if you're a Muslim. Absolutely not. And we have worked really to serve our people who are predominantly Christian. Why? Because we understand that we're one people. And we understand that the God that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us of, and the God that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is teaching us about, came for all of us. And so I think sometimes in the American context, when you see Black Muslims and Black Christians getting along, like the majority of the 2 million men that came to the Million Man March, Christians. The majority of those who come to hear the minister speak, Christians. Well, what is it that they're hearing? They're hearing truth, and they're hearing someone who loves them. So when we see these types of religious clashes among Nigerians, that says something. And I would also say, very often what is described as a religious clash also has ethnic tensions in it, and sometimes political tensions as well. But we'd like you to read this column by Jaron Muhammad, Africa Watch, just to kind of learn a little something, and just to give us a little bit expanded view of what's happening in the world.
Yes, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Absolutely. Just moving right along. Before we jump into the cover story and the other articles that deal with that from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, just wanted to jump in and give you a little more positive news, and just kind of things that are going on in the community and things that we just see in terms of the role that the Black woman is playing. Two articles. First one, a walk for multiple sclerosis in Chicago's south suburbs. Can you give us a little snapshot on
Yeah,
what was going on?
this was actually based on an event that happened last weekend, and organized by Brother Edward Steve Muhammad. And basically, multiple sclerosis is a degenerative disease that strikes people often. It strikes suddenly. But this disease, they're also, according to advocates and experts, this disease also kind of strikes Black folk in a certain way and in a more severe way. So this walk for multiple sclerosis was an opportunity to bring our people information and awareness. And it was also the opportunity to support, members of our community in particular, and others who joined, this walk, to support the families, to support the MS survivors, one of whom is Sister Tamika Muhammad, who is the wife of our student national secretary, Brother Burvi Muhammad. So the Muslims and his family members, really came out to show support. So this is the kind of thing we have to do to show the love that we should have for one another, and to help do what we can to alleviate suffering.
All praise are due to Allah. And I always want to take the opportunity when we have with the coverage, even though this is part two of this article, The Second Self of God, The Rise, Work, and Triumph of Black Women, part two. Can you give us a little context on that article and what they may have missed, and should go and check out the previous issue of the paper as well?
Well, if you go check out last week's paper, last week's edition, or if you go to Final Call, you should be able to see part one of this article. And essentially, we wanted to just highlight the beauty of Black women and what they're doing and their contributions. This article deals more with the cultural side, in terms of how Black women are impacting, how they are creating, how they're shaping and fashioning kind of our image of ourselves, and how they're actually shaping our artistic expression. And arts and culture is very important for the development of any people. So we wanted to hopefully share some stories of some people. Maybe you've heard about them, maybe you haven't. But there are things that are happening in our community where we are working to preserve, protect, and defend ourselves on all levels. So it's important that those stories, as well as other stories, be told. But it's important that those stories be told.
All praises, all praises are due to Allah. And now jumping into really the coverage of three articles, which of course is the cover story of the Final Call newspaper. That focus article that comes from the cover is the reality of the will. Can you tell us why this cover story? Of course, anybody who's been watching the news should probably have some idea why. But can you jump
Yeah.
into it? And also with that is there's an article by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad called "Battle in the Sky is Near," and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's article is "The Will, the Great Mother Plane, the Power of the Will to Destroy." So the reality of the will. Why?
Well, we're starting from a hearing that was held May 17th in Congress on this very subject, and it has been some 50 years since some kind of public hearing on this very important issue was held. Now you remember some months ago, may have been last year almost by this time, that the Department of Defense actually said, "Hey, these things are real." This was a further affirmation, this hearing, where you had U.S. intelligence officials, and they admit that they've seen these crafts, which are referred to as UFOs. They refer to them now as as unidentified aerial phenomena. That's what the government is calling them today. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that these are the wheels, that these are crafts, literally crafts, um, mechanical wonders that were the creation of God Himself for the destruction and made for the destruction of this world. And so we really want you to get in and read what the federal government, what the officials had to say. You know, you had the Undersecretary for Defense and Intelligence Security, and you had others that are high level government officials dealing with this, not just as some matter of rumor, but as a matter of national security. And one of the things that they said they wanted to do with this hearing was to take the stigma off of reports of these crafts, which again, these crafts have been reported since at least the 1940s, right? There have been different areas of focus. There have been different projects, if you will, that the American government has embarked on, and this subject remains to a high degree above top secret. So this was the public session, but there was also a private session with lawmakers. So that's important to note always. So when you come to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's article, the battle in the sky is well. Let me get to it so I can give you the absolute correct title. The battle in the sky is near, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad explains how these crafts, one, a mother plane, and then it contains baby planes or smaller crafts. So you have a mother craft, which is a half mile by a half a mile, and then you have smaller crafts that are housed and that come out of it. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said it was a humanly built planet, and it was made for the express purpose of destroying the enemy. So when you have a powerful enemy like we have, you need a power and you need an answer, not just on the spiritual level, but on the actual war level. And when you read about over and over again the destruction that will come, there has to be a vehicle that will execute that destruction. And so when you read about from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad about the wheel-shaped plane, also known as the mother of planes or the mother plane, very important. Read it. It's in this week's final call, and it's taken from his monumental book, The Fall of America. Along with that, we have a very extensive article from the minister this week. It's actually 5 pages. That's how important this is. For you to be able to read not only what the minister says in terms of explaining the scriptural wheel.
But Brother Naba, you're fading out. Are you there, Brother Naba? Brother Naba, are you there? So, and just going back really briefly, of course, the article from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he said the fall of America, I believe is message to the black man. So please make sure that you please check that out. And of course, this article is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, just waiting, and hopefully he'll be able to jump back in.
These crafts,
Brother Naba,
I think several years ago.
Brother Naba,
yeah.
You actually faded out for probably at least the last minute and a half.
Okay, so I was just saying that. So in this article, 5 pages, extensive, the minister not only gives us the supreme wisdom from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but he gives us the historical record as documented by those who have studied this problem. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the minister and we have been unapologetic in our declaration and belief in what these crafts are and what their purpose is. But when you read through the minister's article, you not only get instances of these crafts around, for example, nuclear facilities. These are some of the reasons why America is worried about these things in terms of whether or not they are a threat to her, right? In addition to that, when you read this article by the minister, it will also, when you read this, when you read this article by the minister, it will also, he will also, or he shares in the article other incidents, something worthy of study, worthy of serious consideration. Uh, Lastly, we know that the UK and in particular, I think the last several years ago, if I'm recalling correctly, released information on what it had about these crafts as well. So again, this is a global phenomenon. These crafts have been seen all over the world. So we hope that you will take the time to read our coverage, to read the article by Sister Anisa Muhammad, one of our up and coming young writers, as well as the article by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But definitely take your time to work through and to look at this article by the minister and hold on to this paper as well as others, or just get the digital edition where you can store them. But we really think this is vital and valuable information. And I think it's going to become more valuable and more vital as time goes on and as we and the world start to see more and more of these crafts. But anytime you hear the government admitting that something exists that they've denied exists, I think it says something about, in my view, in my opinion, it says something is happening now where they simply can no longer keep denying the existence of these crafts. And again, last year there was a 60 Minutes broadcast, which again brought out U.S. pilots who said, hey, man, I saw these things. They're real. So stay tuned, keep watching, keep reading, and keep gaining understanding of what's happening in the world today and why.
Praise to Allah. Thank you for that insight, Brother Naba. We haven't mentioned it in a while, but you please take advantage and support the show. You can go to thecollective9.org. Make sure you subscribe to the Final Call on Facebook and check out Brother Naba. He has a book we haven't mentioned it in a while, Dope Busters. Can you tell us quick as we close out a little bit about what
Yeah.
Dope Busters is and how we
Well,
get a hold of
you
that?
can, if you go to straightwords.com, which is my personal website, straightwords.com, there's information about the book, which basically chronicles and tells the story of the men of the Nation of Islam who went into a, a one of the worst open air drug markets in the country at the height of the crack cocaine epidemic in Washington, D.C., and how we were blessed to be able to shut down that drug market and to deliver a level of peace and security to our people based on based on the guidance and the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and of course explicitly Minister Farrakhan, and the deep commitment that we have to work to be saviors of our people and to try to make our communities safe and decent places to live. I think it's an inspiring story. It's a story that shouldn't be lost, which is one of the reasons why I actually wrote the book. But check it out for yourself. Go to straightwords.com and order a copy or two. And let me know what you think.
Praise to Allah. Thank you once again for another edition and episode of Behind the Final Call Cover Story. Allah willing, we'll see you once again next week, same time, 2:30 Central Standard Time at Behind the Final Call Cover Story. Assalamu alaikum. Until next time, Allah continue to bless us all.